Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavad-Gita, Chapter 5, entitled Karma Yoga, Action in Krishna Consciousness. And tonight we're reading from text number 12. Please repeat after me. Yukta karma phalam tyaktva shantim apnoti naishtikim ayukta kama karena phale shakto nibadyate. Others? Yukta karma phalam tyaktva shantim apnoti naishtikim ayukta kama karena phale shakto nibadyate.
Yukta karma phalam tyaktva shantim apnoti Yukta karma karena phale shakto nibadyate. Yukta karma phalam tyaktva shanti apnoti. Yukta karma karena phale shakto nibadyate. Yukta karma phalam tyaktva shanti apnoti. Yukta karma karena phale shakto nibadyate.
Yukta, one who is engaged in devotional service. Karma phalam, the results of all activities. Tyaktva, giving up. Shantim, perfect peace. Apnoti, achieves. Naishtikim, unflinching. Ayukta, one who is not in Krishna consciousness. Kamakarena, for enjoying the result of work. Phale, in the result. Shaktaha, attached. Nibadyate, becomes entangled. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The steadily devoted soul attains unadulterated peace because he offers the result of all activities to me, whereas a person who's not in union with the divine, who is greedy for the fruits of his labor, becomes entangled. Please repeat. The steadily devoted soul attains unadulterated peace because he offers the result of all activities to me. Whereas a person who is not in union with the divine, who is greedy for the fruits of his labor, becomes entangled. Purport. The difference between a person in Krishna consciousness and a person in bodily consciousness is that the former is attached to Krishna, whereas the latter is attached to the results of his activities. It's a very profound sentence, actually. I'd like to read it again. It has a deep purport. The difference between a person in Krishna consciousness and a person in bodily consciousness is that the former is attached to Krishna, whereas the latter is attached to the results of his activities. The person who is attached to Krishna and who works for him only is certainly a liberated person, and he has no anxiety over the results of his work. In the Bhagavatam, the cause of anxiety or the result of an activity is explained as being one's functioning in the conception of duality. That is, without knowledge of the absolute truth. Krishna is the supreme absolute truth, the personality of Godhead. In Krishna consciousness, there is no duality. All that exists is a product of Krishna's energy, and Krishna is all good. Therefore, activities in Krishna consciousness are on the absolute plane. They are transcendental and have no material effect. One is therefore filled with peace in Krishna consciousness. But one who is entangled in profit calculation for sense gratification, profit calculation for sense gratification, cannot have that peace. That is the secret of Krishna consciousness. Realization that there is no existence besides Krishna is the platform of peace and fearlessness. Gurave Gurachandraya Radhikaya Tadalaye Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tadbhaktaya Namo Namaha. Many times we hear devotees saying, Krishna's in control, Prabhu. Krishna's in control, and we should just depend on Krishna. And it's a little bit of a controversy, interesting subject, because some people say, well, that's okay, but we have to do something. I mean, where do you draw the line, right? There's a story you probably all heard about a man who was praying to God. And he always depended on God. You please protect me, my Lord. And he was walking down the street one day in India, and all of a sudden, everyone starts coming from the other direction. They're running. And they said, run, run. There's a mad elephant coming. And the man said, don't worry. God will protect me. He had that conviction. And he kept walking. And then suddenly he saw the elephant. And there was a mahout on top of the elephant, and he couldn't control the elephant, and he started shouting at the man in the street, get out of the way, get out of the way. And the man in the street said, it's okay. God's protecting me. Everything's all right. And the short story is the elephant killed him. And he went before the Lord, and he said, this is not right. You're supposed to protect your devotee, and you didn't do that. And the Lord said, wait, I did. First of all, I inspired the people in that crowd to yell at you and tell you to get out of there. And then I inspired the mahout, to tell you also to get out of the way. You just didn't listen. So it's not so cut and dried. This is our disease. It's the disease in the material world, the disease of organized religion, is that people just want to be told what to do and we don't want to think. There's a statement from Thakur Bhakti-Vinod in his discussion about the demon of Dhenukasura in the Krishna Samhita. There's one sentence I like very much in the translation. In the Bengali, it says a little different, but basically the same point. He says, subtle discrimination is extremely important for Vaishnavas. Such a nice statement. Subtle discrimination is extremely important for Vaishnavas. Maybe you can repeat it after me. Subtle discrimination is extremely important for Vaishnavas. In other words, we have to think. I don't just do whatever, and it's not just black and white. Not only is it not black and white, it's gray, but this is bhakti. It's multicolors. It's a whole unlimited panorama of color. And we have to consider. Prabhupada writes in the first sentence in the purport, the difference between a person in Krishna consciousness and a person in bodily consciousness is that the former is attached to Krishna, whereas the latter is attached to the results of his activities. Now, as I commented, that's a very deep statement. Now, you may say, we've heard that so many times, very simple, basic, new Bhakti philosophy, but it's very deep and very profound if we contemplate on it. If we contemplate on it, even who within this room, who within our movement, who amongst initiated devotees is a person in Krishna consciousness and a person in bodily consciousness? Well, we can tell because the former is attached to Krishna, whereas the latter is attached to the result of his activities. Oh, it's not such a subtle thing, simple thing. Subtle discrimination is required. We should think a little about what's going on. So, yes, Krishna is in control of everything. Sarva karana karanam. There's nothing that doesn't happen without Krishna's control. But once a devotee made some mistake, and Srila Prabhupada was upset with him and began chastising him, the devotee said, but Prabhupada, it was Krishna's arrangement. It was the wrong thing to say. And Prabhupada became more angry and told him that, was it Krishna's arrangement or was it your damn foolishness? Now, can I say that, how do we understand that statement from Prabhupada? Can I say that, well, most of the time Krishna's in control, but maybe 1 or 2 days a week he takes a break, takes a day off, everybody needs a break, right? And what goes on those days, that's my doing. Can we say that? We can't say that. But we do have some freedom of choice. We have a choice to decide, we're at the airport, where we're going to go, what our destination will be. And when we're on the plane, we also have a choice. We can drink beer or we can drink orange juice. We have some minute choice. And that minute choice is very important. It's very, very dear to Krishna. Really, if we contemplate the subject matter deeply, Krishna is in control of everything. And we should always try to see Krishna's hand in everything. But Krishna's hand means I want to hear Krishna's voice and what Krishna has to say to me. What is he trying to tell me? Not that I should just be dull and ignorant and okay, I'm going on with things. But what does he want from me? And people who don't see that, who don't see what Krishna wants, as Prabhupada is paraphrasing in the purport of verse from the 11th canto of the Bhagavatam, Bhayam Dvitiya Binivesata Shat. For such people who Advitiya, Abhiniva, they see some duality. They see Krishna's there. When I go to the temple, I'm Krishna conscious. It's good. And when I'm home, it's my house. I watch a little television and maybe we don't eat the same things we do in the temple because it's two things. And such people, they're always full of fear, bhaya, because they see duality. They don't see Krishna's hand behind everything. They don't see that maybe Krishna's trying to give me some instruction. Once we asked a question to my Guru Maharaj, how do we understand what is Krishna's desire? And he told us, and this is a general statement, that if something comes easily, you can accept it like that. But if there's some very difficult, then you should question, does Krishna really want this? And maybe Krishna's trying to give me some instruction. Krishna's a person. And Krishna's always trying to reach out to us, to connect with us. So if we contemplate the matter, we can see there are problems in this world. There's a saying in America, I'll paraphrase it, stuff happens. And it happens to everybody. It even happens in our movement. And it's not always pleasant when stuff happens. So because stuff happens, we have in this world unlimited different varieties of solutions for those problems. But the 11th canto of the Bhagavatam says, it dismisses all of them. It says, Pashyat Paka Viparyasam. Very interesting statement. This is a philosophy of the tar baby, you could say, in America. They get the opposite result. A young boy is feeling really depressed and very lonely. So he decides, I want to marry a girl. And he sees a girl who's very, very beautiful. And he marries her. And he thinks that's it. Now everything's going to be peaceful. But he doesn't know she's got 4 boyfriends who are very, very angry and they don't like him. And then all of a sudden it's a big problem. And life's become so much more complicated. And now all of a sudden she gets pregnant, there's a baby, and now they have to buy baby clothes and nappies and a stroller and all these kind of things. And whereas before life was simple, now it's become very complicated. The solution that he adopted to solve his problem caused more problems. And that's the nature, the inherent nature, the swadharma of all vastu, all prakrita vastu, all material objects, everything material has this particular dharma, this particular intrinsic nature. Whatever solution you try to take shelter of in the material world will only create more problems. It won't solve your problem. So we should contemplate on that. And we can see in the world 4 basic different types of attitudes to solve problems. And these are governed by one's consciousness and by the modes of nature. They're simple, and if you think about it, you can recognize these very easily. Someone who's in tamagun, who's in ignorance, and they see problems, then they think the solution is, we have to invade Ukraine and kill all the people that won't agree with us and take over. We have to do violence. We have to have revolution. I have to punch someone in the nose. That fighting is a solution. That's someone in the mode of ignorance. Someone in the mode of passion, rajagun, the symptom, their solution is that they think that money will solve the problem. We just need to collect more money. The more money we have, because money is the honey. And the more money that we have, everything will be solved, right? No, it's not like that. I saw in the news one man who won a lottery of like $100 million. As they say, happy days are here again. He was a very, very happy man. And they interviewed him on the television, and he was so blissful when he got his money. 2 years later, they went back to him. And they said, so now, please tell us, how was it? And he was very sober, and he said, you know, that was the worst thing that ever happened in my life. He said, my house has been broken into about 20 times by people trying to steal money from me. He said, everywhere I go, I meet people that I don't remember who come up to me and say, hey, Fred, remember me when we were 5 years old? We were best friends, and how are you doing? And can you lend me some money? Like this. Now all of a sudden I have so many false friends. And I had this money and I gave so much to my wife. But what did she do? She left me. And she went with some other man and divorced me. But I had my daughter. And my daughter, I started lavishing so many expensive gifts on her, and I bought her a brand new expensive car and nice clothes and things. And I gave her whatever she wanted, so much money. And after some time, my daughter became addicted to drugs. And one day she died. Getting that money was the worst thing that ever happened in my life. Pashet paka viparyasam. We think there'll be some solution. We think money will solve the problem. But money won't solve the problem. Someone is in passion, they think that. And in passion, they think that money will solve the problem or that management will solve the problem. We just need to train everybody as good managers. If we just train the whole movement as good managers, then everything will be fine. And we'll solve all the problems in Prabhupada's movement. Right? We think like that sometimes. Huh? But I have a problem with that. Because if you go to the Hewlett-Packard Company or IBM or any big corporation, I can tell you with all respect to our society, they're a lot better organized than we are. And their management is much, much better. And things are really not so good there. They have all kinds of corporate politics. They have all kinds of anxieties and disturbances, and there's no happiness, and most importantly, there's no hope of Krishna consciousness. So management is important. Money is important. Sometimes even violence is important. And we see Prabhupada says that violence can be used in Krishna consciousness. But we should understand the proper perspective. Someone in the mode of goodness, they see a solution. They see that we should have education. We should open more schools. And we should establish cultural principles. Vanashram Dharma. They see this as a solution. And these are important solutions. They help. Prabhupada wanted education very badly. But they're not going to solve our ultimate problems. The fourth attitude we may find very rarely is someone is in Suddha Sattva, a devotee. And that person, they see as a solution bhakti. And they don't consider anything else to be a solution. Shada sabde visvas kai shuddha Krishna bhakti koila sarva karma krita hoy. Faith is defined in Chaitanya Charitamrita as someone who has unflinching conviction that all that I have to do is bhakti, and everything else will be solved. Now, at this point, some astute listeners who are contemplating hopefully what we're saying may say, well, that's okay, but we've seen some serious problems in our society. Well, it's not just our society. I'll read you a little statement some of you may have heard from an article by Thakur Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. The church that has the best chance of survival in this damned world is that of atheism, under the guise, the convenient guise, of theism. This is a very profound statement. I'd like to just elaborate a little on that. So that church, that religious organization that has the best chance to survive is one that actually teaches atheism, but under the convenient guise of theism. It looks like they're teaching something spiritual, something religious, but they're not. Okay? The churches, and he's speaking about spiritual groups in general, have always proved to be the staunchest upholders of the grossest form of worldliness, from which even the worst of non-ecclesiastical criminals are found to recoil. It's a really beautiful statement. Let me explain his English a little bit for some of you who are not native English speakers. Those churches, those religious organizations, they've always proved to be the strongest upholders of the grossest form of worldliness, the worst form of materialism. It's the worst, the very, very worst. From which even the worst of non-ecclesiastical criminals means non-religious criminals. People who are not religious, the worst criminals who are not religious are found to recoil. They become disgusted. Even the criminals, the worst criminals who are not devotees, they become disgusted. And I'm sorry to say, but we've seen it here. We've seen it in our society. We shouldn't really be surprised about it. In this article, which was titled Putana, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, in my humble opinion, gives one of the most brilliant sociological analyses of organized religion that's ever been made. It's wonderful. And he begins his discussion by speaking about Kamsa. And he says that Kamsa represents the head of mundane religion. Sometimes we give a whole seminar about Kamsa. He's not actually the son of Ugrasena. He's a son of a demon. His name is Gobila. There's a story in the Padma Purana. And this Gobila took the form of Ugrasena. It's a long story. And he raped Padmavati, the wife of Ugrasena. And they had this child, which Ugrasena never knew wasn't his, which was Kamsa. Now, Gobila, the real father of Kamsa, is an interesting person because when he raped Padmavati, he took that form. Padmavati, at a certain point, she could tell by some bodily characteristic or something that wasn't there in what she thought was her husband's body. She could tell it was an imposter. And she became very, very disturbed. She was a very chaste lady. And she said, "What have you done? Who are you? You've spoiled my chastity. I'll curse you." And Gobila, it's a long story. To get to the short part of it, Gobila offered her so many things. He said, "Don't worry." He said, "I can teach you all about Dharma Shastra." Well, this is the guy who's disguising himself as another man's husband, another woman's husband, and raping her. He's going to teach her about Dharma Shastra, but he really knew. He knew all the shlokas and all the philosophy and so many different points. He said, "I can tell you what it means to be a good daughter, what it means to be a good queen, what it means to be a good wife, how to rule a country. I can tell you so many things." Because Gobila, who was a Yaksha, he's a Yaksha. Gobila, he was very, very learned actually. And that quality of learning seems to have been passed on to Kamsa. And Kamsa was actually a very learned king. And he was very, very expert. His father-in-law, who's his father-in-law? Jarasandha. Jarasandha, Bhaktivinoda Thakur at one point says that Jarasandha is like the embodiment of Varnashram Dharma. And if you read about him in the 10th canto, the Bhagavatam, he was so first class in how he took care of the Brahmins and everybody in his country. He just had one problem. He was a demon who hated Krishna, but aside from that, he was actually a very noble king. And Kamsa had a similar problem, although he also killed a lot of other people. But he knew philosophy. And Bhaktisiddhanta says that Kamsa represents the head of mundane religion. And that Putana, who's the first of the demons, who sent to Braj to kill Krishna, Putana represents the false guru. And this is very interesting because she looks like a mother. In fact, it's said in some places that when she arrived, she was so beautiful that Rohini and Yashoda thought she was a great devotee, maybe from the heavenly planets, and they invited her to come inside, and they allowed her to offer her breast to Krishna. Very interesting. They didn't recognize. This is a side point I'd like to just comment on. How is it the Brijbasis didn't recognize her? Sometimes devotees, they say, so maybe they'll say to Srup Damodar Prabhu, you were in charge here, and this person was cheating, and it's your fault. He's the manager, and you should have known, you should have kicked the guy out, da-da-da, like that. But it's not always such a simple thing. The question is not, why is it that Srup Damodar Prabhu didn't recognize some rascal person who actually wasn't qualified? The question is, how is it that Rohini and Yashoda didn't recognize Putana? That's a big question. Never mind some little devotees in this world. How is it that the cowherd boys didn't recognize Vatsasura when he came amongst them? How is it they didn't recognize Pralambasura when he came amongst them? How is it that Rupa Goswami says that Brinda Devi, when she saw Shankachuda, she thought that Shankachuda was a sun god, was a great devotee come to worship Radharani. How is that? Because the Brijbasis are simple. Now at this point, some of our doubting friends may say, well, it's okay, but being simple can be dangerous. I've seen a lot of simple people, and they were exploited. And problems came, even in our own society. It's not good to be simple. We need to cultivate something. Again, what we need is we need to hear Krishna's voice. The Brijbasis are simple. They didn't try to judge who's qualified and who's not qualified, who was good and who wasn't good. Anybody who would come and wanted to play with Krishna, wanted to serve Krishna, they thought they were a devotee. They were so simple, they accepted them. In all of Braj, no one could recognize Putana. Only one person, and he was a little baby. But we have to take shelter of that baby. But who takes shelter of a baby? That means you think, well, just a baby, I need something more serious. And therefore our friends who are in the mode of passion, in the mode of ignorance, or in the mode of goodness, they may say we should take shelter of these other solutions. Expose, Prabhu. That will solve the problem. We have to expose all the rascals for being what they are. But there's also problems in that. Where do you draw the line between something which is constructive and something which is destructive? How do you tell what is constructive criticism, helpful criticism, and something which is detrimental? I think in our own lives, how many of us like it, especially if it's a junior person? Some devotee comes and starts correcting us and instructing us. Sometimes we feel a little annoyed. You're a little proud. Please leave me alone. Unless we have faith in that person. And that faith is the barometer. In the Padma Purana, Vyasadeva states, Ashadadani vimuke prishanvati yastopadesha sivanama paradha. It's a namaparad, an offense to the holy name, to give instruction to someone who's vimuk, who doesn't want to hear from you, or ashadadani, who doesn't have faith in you. That's the key thing. We can say, hey, look, sometimes we see in America, father will tell his 18-year-old son, I brought you into this world, and I can take you out of this world. You should listen to me. We feel like we have to have some heavy-handed tactics. Because after all, I'm the father. After all, I'm the person in charge. and you have to listen to me. But it doesn't work. It's hard enough when they're 5 or 6 years old. But when they get about 14, 15 years old, you can't tell them anymore. Why should I? They say, why should I do it? You can't say, because I said so. That doesn't work anymore. You have to be their friend. Or maybe you can say, because I said so. But they have to have sufficient faith in you. My Guru Maharaj once said that very wise thing, that you don't try to give instruction to other devotees unless they have faith in you. He said, because that is the business of Guru. And now we've scratched the surface of another deeper thing. So many of us, subtly or grossly, want to be Guru. Many devotees, they'll say that well, Prabhupada, he chastised them like anything. And he called them all hogs, dogs, rascals, and this and that. And I should do the same thing. We should follow Prabhupada's instruction, but we should have a brain. And we should listen, not with our ear, but with our heart, to Krishna's voice. When we should say things and when we shouldn't say things. It's not bad to speak boldly. We should speak boldly. But at the same time, we have to speak in an appropriate way. And if someone doesn't have faith in me, then what can I do? Sometimes we tell a story that I heard. Prabhuji, you can correct me. You may know better. Subdhamana Prabhu. That I heard when the devotees first went to South Africa. It was very difficult at that time. Apartheid was going on, and there was a lot of prejudice, and people weren't very open-minded. It was very hard to establish anything. So they finally rented a house, and Prabhupada was going to come. Now, when they rented the house, they went to see the owner of the house, and they were wearing hats and Western clothes because probably they wouldn't rent to a Hare Krishna devotee. And so the lady rented the house to them, not knowing. And they signed the lease. And she was living right next door to them. And she didn't know they were Hare Krishna devotees until 4:30 the next morning. And she found out, and she wasn't very amused. She was very, very upset about it and very, very angry. And I've heard even very hateful. So much so that when the devotees would come out every day, she would, if she was there, she would start shouting at them and calling them bad names and chastising them. So then Srila Prabhupada came. And the next morning, Prabhupada said, so let's go for a morning walk. The devotees looked out the window and they saw the lady was out in her yard watering the grass or something. And the devotees said, well, Prabhupada, maybe today we can just walk inside the house. And Prabhupada said, what, are you crazy? And then they said, well, Prabhupada, there's this lady and this problem. So Prabhupada, he went outside, and Prabhupada walked right over to this lady. And he said, oh, you have such nice flowers, nice garden. You must be very expert at this. And the lady was very pleased, and she started talking with him. And the funny thing was, every day while Srila Prabhupada was there for a few days, when he would come out in the morning, he would go and talk with that lady. And every day he would speak to her about things which were completely mundane. He didn't call her a hog, or a dog, or a camel, or an ass. Not even once. Prabhupada praised her and told her what a pious person she was and how nice she was. And he would ask her, how is your teeth? Do you still have all your teeth? I still have all my teeth. Prabhupada would say, how is the weather? And completely mundane things. And that lady somehow, as far as I know, she never ever liked the Hare Krishna devotees. But she really liked Srila Prabhupada. So our point is this, that what do you do if someone doesn't have faith in you? And you can't call him a hog, dog, camel, or ass, which may be really important to do, right? You got to put them in their place, right? Because they don't have faith in you. Then we have to behave. We have to do some hard work. We have to behave in such a way that they'll develop faith in us. Oh, that's not so easy. It's a lot easier just to call him a hog or a dog. Huh? I have to actually behave in a saintly way. People, and especially devotees, will see us by our behavior. And by the behavior that we exhibit, by the solutions that we take shelter of, we give messages to others. Think about it. It's a fact. Someone is a Hare Krishna devotee. They've been initiated for 20 years or more, serving in the society nicely, and they see problems. Raise your hand if you've never seen any problems in ISKCON. Okay? I don't know anybody yet who's never seen any problems. Prabhupada said it's very difficult to establish a spiritual movement in the material world. It's a little unreasonable. I'll go on a side point for a moment. Someone wrote me last night and they said, oh, such and such devotee, my nephew met such and such devotee, and he was very, very angry at ISKCON. He left ISKCON 10 years ago. And I said, okay, I understand. I'm sympathetic. I also had bad experiences. I don't know anybody who hasn't had a bad experience. I said, but I'd like to know, what is it that they didn't like about ISKCON? They didn't like the name, the acronym, ISKCON? Or was it they didn't like the buildings? Or was it they didn't like the GBC? Now, they didn't like the GBC. Exactly who on the GBC? And what did they do on the GBC? Because we are persons. Or was it they didn't like the holy name? Or they didn't like the Srimad Bhagavatam? What is it they didn't like? What we don't like are the things which are not ISKCON. Politics, mundane diplomacy, envy, fault-finding, people who are acting for some big position in that. We don't like that. But once a nice analogy was given that Prabhupada's mission is like the Ganga, and the Ganga is always pure. But you may say, wait a minute, I've personally seen dead bodies in the Ganga, and sometimes there's a lot of flies in the dead bodies and a really bad smell. How can you say? Will you drink the water right next to that dead body? Or there's some stool in the water, will you take the stool out and drink that water? The stool is not pure. And that dead body is not pure. But the Ganga is always pure. And Prabhupada's desire, Prabhupada's Seva Sangha ISKCON, as it is always pure. Because Prabhupada's desire is always pure. And if we understand and we serve that desire, if we cultivate the ear, the heart of the ear, to hear that desire of Srila Prabhupada and our previous acharyas, then we can be a tool for that. But Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he's written in one article in Sajjana Toshini that there's no limit to the number of wannabe reformers in this world. People who want to solve all the problems. But the ironic thing is, the more things they want to solve, the more problems they cause. Because pasyat pakaviparyasam. You want to solve a problem. Maybe you're very sincere and you see there's some problem in management, and then I went to the person above that manager and they won't listen. I even went to the GBC, they won't listen. So I'm going to start some website. And I'll broadcast it to the world because devotees should know. I can't just idly sit by and watch Srila Prabhupada's movement be destroyed. I have to do something. And if you don't do something, then you're part of the problem. They'll say like that, isn't it? But pasyat pakaviparyasam, because the solution they're adopting is not bhakti. It's actually something mundane. expose, revolution is not bhakti. Now you may say, but Srila Prabhupada created a revolution. And Prabhupada said we should expose the rascals. But Prabhupada was on the transcendental platform. Prabhupada is guru, and I can't imitate him. And if I try to imitate him, then pashyat paka viparyasam, some contrary result will come. I may have a noble motivation. It's not bad. I want to solve the problems. I'm disturbed when I hear about children being molested or women being abused and things going on that are wrong. I'm very disturbed by that. But what type of solution will I take shelter of? And whatever solution we take shelter of will give a message. You've been a devotee for 20 years, 30 years, and you're taking shelter of expose on the internet. So you subtly, whether you know it or not, you're giving a message to the devotees. And the message is this: chanting Hare Krishna is okay, but it doesn't solve all the problems. That's the message you're giving. And that really, if you're a concerned person with a heart, a proper devotee, then you have to do this expose. Otherwise, you're part of the problem. They'll say like that. Because they don't have faith, ultimately, in Krishna. Now, it's not such a simplistic thing like the story of our friend and the elephant who was killed because he stupidly had blind faith. We have to hear what is Krishna's voice. We have to work some. And no one should tolerate injustice done to children, or injustice done to women or cows or any persons, especially devotees, especially in our society. We can't tolerate it. But what solution will we adopt? By the solution you adopt, we'll be able to tell what mode of nature you're in, or maybe you're in Vishuddha-sattva. Maybe if you're actually taking shelter of bhakti, but not just taking shelter of bhakti in a one-dimensional way, that just chant Hare Krishna Prabhu and everything will be okay. All the Guru Kulis would just tell them, anyway, just you're not chanting enough. Never mind that you were abused and molested and this and that. It's your fault, and you should just chant Hare Krishna and everything will be okay. We can't do that. And if you suggest something like that, it's offensive. And I don't think that Krishna would tell us to do that. We have to hear the voice of Krishna. We have to hear the voice of Prabhupada. And then we can really take shelter of bhakti. Because subtle discrimination is extremely important for Vaishnavas. Can we say it? Subtle discrimination is extremely important for Vaishnavas. So we'll stop there. Grantara Srimad Bhagavad-Gita ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Bo. Vanchakalpa Darubhishcham, Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha, Patitanam Pavanibhyo Vaishnava. So thank you all very much. I'm embarrassed sitting in front of all these senior devotees. Does anybody have any comments or questions or anything? A very topical discussion, I thought. You know, when we speak on Gita or Bhagavatam, I have an approach that I think is a really good thing for devotees in general to adopt. It's good to speak on the verse. We don't like it if someone reads the verse and they just say, well, anyway, time according to the atom. Well, I think I'll just tell some Prabhupada stories today. You know, we would prefer if someone can actually speak on the Bhagavatam. But just speaking on the Bhagavatam is also not enough. We should speak, what is relevant to us? Because Krishna's message is alive in the Bhagavatam and in the Gita, and it's going to say something different to us every day. And the different groups of people that we're with will speak in a different way. If we're speaking to a group of non-devotee Christians, we'll speak in a certain way. I gave a lecture and we were quoting St. Francis of Assisi. There's some Catholic people in that. And that was very appropriate in that discussion. But I might not do that so much in this Sangha. So it depends on who we're speaking with. We should contemplate. Krishna always has a message for us in the Gita and in the Bhagavatam. Okay? No other questions or comments? Krishna Kun? Loudly? Yeah. Jiva Goswami says, he has a mic right here. She's a very soft-spoken person.
I was just reminded of something as I heard you say that faith is the barometer of whether you can give something to someone or not. And I was reminded of how Jiva Goswami says that if you don't respect, if someone is unable to respect other living entities, it's useless for preaching. I found that statement very good.
If someone is
unable to respect others, then it's useless for preaching.
That's beautiful.
And it's connected to that. I mean, I connected in my mind to that story of Prabhupada that you related from South Africa with that lady who Prabhupada was kind of cultivating in a very low-key way. He was respecting that person. He saw some good quality. She is a nice guy, but whatever. And she's developing a little kind of friendship, which is the beginning of faith. So I just wanted to share it.
Very nice comment. Give it Krishna Rati Mataji. Mataji.
While accomplishing some task, at what point we know we have to stop our endeavor and understand Krishna's plan is different?
At one point, well, it's not such a simple thing. Wouldn't it be nice if we could just say at 50% or at 80% or when the temperature reaches this point, but it's not something that we can
So
just...
how will we understand it?
We have to do some hard work. We have to cry in our heart and pray. And the amazing thing is that some answers will be completely different for one person and another person. Here in this room in Vrindavan, Srila Prabhupada in Vrindavan here, he gave sannyas to a few devotees, and afterwards he called them in. And the first one, he told them, you should travel. It's your duty as a sannyasi to always travel. Sannyasis should never stay in one place. The next sannyasi came in the room. Prabhupada told him, so I want you to stay here and don't go anywhere. And you'll be in charge of the Gurukul. So the amazing thing is that voice may be completely different to different persons. If those two sannyasis talk later on, they might get in a big argument. No, Prabhupada said like this. But that was for that particular person. Okay? Something over here. Prabhuji? Subdhamara Prabhu?
Yeah, it was a little bit about what you just had spoken. My question was, we are supposed to learn to surrender. And how to discriminate where we're just afraid to go for something, or we go just for something personal, or we listening for a voice inside. Which voice we are listening to?
I think, let me back up a little bit. I think one reason why so many devotees become angry with the institution, ISKCON, and the GBC, or the managers, or whatever, is because they saw the management of the society as a solution to their problems. And when it failed them, they had a crisis. So the first thing is we have to know who to take shelter of, and our society can do so much. I think the temple here could probably help you get a visa for India. And if you get sick, they can help you. They'll tell you where a doctor is, and they'll give you a room in the brahmachari ashram, and they'll give you prasadam, and they'll do so many things, and organize, most importantly, kirtans and Bhagavatam class and things. But they can't tell you who to marry. They can't tell you who you should accept as guru. And they can't tell you which instruction you should accept and which you shouldn't. I heard a story that once there was a CNN reporter who had gone to some South Asian country, and there were a huge forest fire going on. And so he was supposed to get in an airplane, and the plane was going to take him over the fire so he could make some video coverage of it and make some report about it. And so the plane was there waiting, and the reporter was a little late, so he jumped on the plane, slammed the door shut, and said, "Let's go." And the guy who was sitting in the cockpit said, "Okay." And so then the plane took off, and they were flying in the air. And then the CNN reporter said, "So take me over the fires." And the pilot said, "Why?" And he said, "Well, because I'm here with CNN, and I'm here to do this report." And the pilot became really frightened, and he said, "You mean you're not my flight instructor?" So we should be careful. Don't just grab the first plane and the first pilot we see on it, but we should be careful who we're accepting. Okay?